So another thing I really want to talk about, because I'm really surprised that every proponent of time management I've seen or read talks about one of these techniques as though it's like the best technique ever, without really comparing or looking at the pros and cons of each. And so the approach I'm talking about is what to do when you wake up. What's like the first thing you should do? And there's basically two schools of thought on this. There's the Brian Tracy Eat That Frog school of thought, and there's the, for lack of a better term, joyful approach. So the Brian Tracy Eat That Frog approach, in case you aren't aware, is that you should tackle whatever is the most challenging, difficult, unpleasant, but hopefully important or impactful thing first thing in the morning. So he talks about it in his book, which you get on Amazon for a pretty low price, that this approach does two things. And one is that it helps you to get over that hump, that hurdle of the thing that you would probably otherwise try to avoid. And secondly, it gives you that motivation, that confidence boost that you got that really important, challenging thing done, which makes everything else throughout the rest of the day that much easier in comparison. Now, this approach, of course, has its pros, which were just kind of mentioned, that it does get you over that kind of, thing you have to pull your teeth to do, and makes everything else that much more pleasant and enjoyable and responsive, and it doesn't lag in your mind. And it kind of sets the tone for the day. You've established that you're a hard worker and you're willing to take on challenges, and that can be character building. On the other hand, though, and I haven't heard too many people talk about this, it does have some issues. One being, it doesn't take into account chronobiology, which is the idea that different people feel different energy levels at different times of the day. It can be depending on their bed schedule, excuse me. Just their biology could be depending on when they eat or when they like to eat. Could depend on the night before, the day before, things like this. And so it's kind of a rigid system in that it's meant to be approached by everyone in the same way. But, time management is not a one-size-fits-all thing. Another issue it has to do with its rigidity is that it doesn't take into account that shit happens. You may not feel very well in the morning, then you feel better as the day goes on, and that might be a better time to tackle the challenging things. You may have a meeting if you're working that you have to go to early on in the day, and so you don't have time to get to this thing. You may have an exam coming up, and that might be the thing that's preoccupying your mind rather than something else that may be more unpleasant than that. Can't really imagine what's more unpleasant than a final exam, but help me out here. And so I personally am not a big fan of it. It does work for some people, so I would definitely recommend giving it a shot. But if it doesn't work for you, don't take that as some kind of personal failing. The second approach, which I like more, is doing the thing that brings you the most joy. And this isn't to say, play video games because they're fun. This is to say, do something on your to-do list or that's related to your goals that gives you a feeling of fulfillment. And that, I think, is a very effective, at least for most people, way of propelling yourself forward. If you've done something that makes you feel good and you value, you are going to feel good as a result. And so I believe, at least for a lot of people, that can help to stretch and elongate your motivation throughout the day. Some people go by, and I've also tried this, just doing whatever's easiest so you can knock out a lot of things and you get on this kind of momentum, this snowball going down the hill and picking up speed and mass. That can work, but that can also lead to a tendency to try to find easy, urgent, minor things to do so that you feel busy, which often is what gets people in the rut in needing time management in the first place. So if that works for you, again, go for it. But that's also a technique that I don't recommend as highly.